call this to order. It's the January 10th meeting of the North Bennington Graded School District Prudential Committee, our regularly scheduled meeting for January. There are no public members, public other than us, so I assume there are no public comments. So we'll go right to finance. Well, I guess we should introduce ourselves since that's usually starting with Mary.
Mary Rogers, treasurer.
Lori Elwell, clerk.
Maria Scully.
Ray Molyneux, chair of the board.
Matthew Patterson.
Tim Schrader.
Kim Kroll.
Tim Newbold, head of the village school.
Tim Falkine, SVSU.
All right, thanks. So, Mary, finance is the order of business here.
There was really nothing highly unusual, nothing
Right.
unusual at all or out of the ordinary in December's activity. I had mentioned at the last meeting, and you can see on this report, that we did pay the $83,000 that had been borrowed on the tax anticipation line of credit, and there was $466 of interest on that. So that is now done. We only do a line of credit instead of a whole note. So that is it until next year, but we should have no reason to need to borrow money.
Okay, that's good. You didn't receive any insurance proceeds?
I have seen nothing. Now, I have not been over to the SVSU to sign the checks that you'll be voting on tonight, so if there is something, I'll see it tomorrow. And if there is, I'll certainly send out an email and let you know something's there.
The appraiser said there was a check coming, but then he's no longer working with it, so.
Oh, okay. So the old check's in the mail routine. Okay. We've heard that.
Yeah. All right. Consent agenda, which would be on the back here. Minutes from December 20th, which I put up on Drive, and then it had to convert it, and it skipped the minutes, and I never could pick them up again. So. But and the warrants, let's see, we have mostly assessments to the SU, and payment to the village school, payment to Lori for her services as secretary, and we reimburse the supervisory union for the cost of board insurance and for the cost of general liability policy. Those are what make up the amount of the warrant. So I'd entertain a motion to approve minutes and the warrants, the minutes of December 20, 2017, and the warrants for January of 2018.
So moved.
Set.
Second.
All right. Are there any questions about those? Any specific questions you want to ask about the warrants, maybe? Or nope? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Policies, none. Superintendent, who is with us tonight?
How are you? Well, two concerns I have. One that, well, it does impact you, but not really. Snow days. That's a struggle that we used 4 snow days. We started late this year because of the construction project at BSD. We went back after Labor Day. So we are in school through the 21st. One more snow day will bring us to Friday the 22nd, which was in our published calendar is the last day of school. So there is some belief that I cannot schedule school after the 22nd of June. But yeah, so that the last week though of June, there is a lot of professional learning opportunities for our staff that the state of Vermont programs, because all these other schools are out. And, you know, it's brought the whole concern up again of, you know, why do we schedule 180 days when Vermont is 175 days and many other school systems are 175 days, and that's why we see a lot of the professional learning opportunities are that last week of June. So we'll monitor that, see what happens. Last year, what we did when we ran up, because we had 7 snow days last year, we backed off on some of the student days, the staff, because they're paid, till they did professional learning days, and we let the students out. We have a more difficult option this year because BSD came back 5 days late. Their students will, even going to the 22nd, they will only get 175 days in. So it's not panic time, but it's, you know, as I'm telling the other boards, it's something that in our administrative meetings we're already talking and looking at different possible scenarios, because, you know, what is it, January 10th, and I got one more snow day that I can call, and we'll always go on the side of caution. I'll take all kinds of phone calls telling me I shouldn't have canceled school, which I get those. Then the phone call that we got a bus on the side of the road upside down with 50 kids in it. So those are the phone calls we don't want. The other thing is budgets. That's been keeping us busy. Let's see, Shasbury passed their budget earlier tonight. SVSU passed their budget last night. I anticipate that the Bennington School Board will pass. They're having a special meeting Thursday night. They'll pass their budget then. It's basically done. Woodford should wrap up on Monday. They have a budget meeting Monday. Pownell, I'm not too sure yet. And I don't know where you guys are in your budget process. You haven't met with Renee yet.
Well,
I know she's been sending a bunch of emails, but yeah.
I think we know where we're at pretty good. We just need to nail down some things with the village school.
Yeah. By and large, our budgets look good. I mean, the state, the governor, Secretary of Education panicked a lot of us earlier in the fall because of the deficit in the ed fund, and where we're finding, you know, negotiations were successful that brought health savings in health care and health insurance. But really where we saw the bigger savings is we had budgeted for anticipating a pretty big increase if negotiations weren't successful, so we had to put a contingency in there of like a 15% increase in insurance. So that's why you're seeing stable. Shasbury's budget, they actually voted a lower number than they did last year, which is really helping. So I hope that means we'll be successful getting budgets passed, because reasonable increases or no increases at all, even in BSD, which has to incorporate for the first time their bond payment for their instruction. So that's good news, considering how difficult it looked earlier in the fall. We'll see where everything's got to be warned, and I think it's June, January 30th is
right.
when we're going to have that all. But we're
March
shooting
6th.
for the 19th. Renee is shooting for the 19th, so then we have that next week if there's anything that gives us some wiggle room.
Yeah.
19th is
Well,
Friday.
part of what allows the SU budget to come in where it came in is there was some high dollars spent outside of,
Yep.
out of
Out of district placements.
that aren't happening
Yeah.
at the secondary level and elementary level too. I guess some of them. So there was considerable $600,000.
Yeah, there was one out of district placement alone that was almost $400,000. So
Right.
that's not in the budget. Two others.
Right.
So, yeah.
Plus, as Jim says, the health insurance and the actual sign-ups have actually lowered the cost a little bit even further, because people have chosen some of the alternative plans that use health savings accounts.
A lot of work by the Human Resource Department this fall, because, you know, to transfer people, even though it was negotiated, contract and voted on, everybody knew it was coming. It went live, and it's still going on right now. Because now all the health savings accounts are all being set up, and I think I got an email that the first distribution of that was this week. So the amount of phone calls that they've handled from staff members, because it is anxiety-inducing to have your health insurance changing, and to be convinced that you're going to be better off with this plan. So we'll see. But they have done a tremendous job. I think the count that I saw was they did like 32 different seminars throughout the schools during the fall, going over what's in the plans and how they work. So.
But actually, most people opted for the other alternative, not health savings plans, but what's that other alternative?
Yeah, so not an HSA, the HRA. Yeah. So it depends on where you are. It depends if you're an off-contract employee or the only ones that had a choice were the off-contract employees, because the union negotiated only for the HRA, which
Yeah, that's what Renee said.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I have the right initials. But and we were surprised by that in negotiations that they would want that.
Right, because that means that savings go back to the SU.
Any money left in that account at the end of the year reverts back to the SU. But it's possible, and I don't want to guess why people negotiate for things, but it was what the Vermont NEA was recommending that they do, and it probably is the most similar way to how they it's kind of a foolproof plan, which is similar to what their insurance was prior to the change. So
Right.
with
They know those expenses are going to be covered.
right. Yeah, there's
Well, it's changed a lot, though, from what I can tell in terms of coverage. It's gotten much more in line with what I would say is reduced quality healthcare.
I would, if it costs less money, I would think that makes sense, right? That savings is coming from somewhere.
Yeah.
I haven't personally used it yet, so I don't know. But I know, and we heard this from a lot of people who deferred things this fall to wait to the health savings accounts and kicked in, and the payments were made into that because there's an employee contribution to that, and defer, so now you're doing that with pre-tax dollars. We'll see, and how long it lasts. I mean, they're already talking about what the rate increases for next year will be.
So next year we may not be in this halcyon sea that we're in right now.
I think we saw a lot of things. You mentioned the special education, the fact that we over budgeted in this fiscal year for an increase in health insurance that didn't come, with some savings from the change in plans. Those three things were a major contribution. I myself are a little awestruck when we started doing budgets. I'd be saying to Renee, that can't be right. We got to check that number. How can that be a negative? How can it be going down? I mean, it's great, but we were all scratching our heads saying, what are we forgetting as we're putting this budget together? But it's, as Ray pointed out, the special ed alone doesn't mean that that could change tomorrow. But
Yeah. Someone moves in.
yeah.
All right, so do you want to speak to Woodford's vote?
Well,
I mean, it's
I did have, we gave the committee support as far as warning it and all that, but then we stayed out of it. It's really a local matter.
Yeah.
We offered to go to the floor meeting if they wanted us there to explain anything, but that offer was declined. So what will happen is, if they want assistance in filling out their Section 9, because they got to get that
Yeah.
quickly. There's a draft, ready to go if need be. And, I was asked by the Bennington Banner today, what's next? I'm not aware of any board that has any plans for what's next, other than sit back and wait to see what the state's going, what the Secretary of Education is going to do with the Section 9 reports that she was sent, and what her recommendations will be to the state board. My understanding is whatever the state board comes out and recommends, there is time for public comment and counter proposals by the local school districts for.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's gonna go on for a while.
Yeah. It'll be. I don't anticipate. Because we hear that, will people accept what the state says, or will there be legal fights over that? I anticipate there probably will be. So I don't want to speculate on what's going to happen. I just know that I haven't had any board yet request any, to take any action or do any plan for anything other than they've all submitted Act 46 Section 9 except for Woodford. They held off until they wrote.
Do you know the ballot they used, was it the exact same ballot as from November?
I don't know that. I know that they didn't vote on, the ruling came back that the committee stood, so they would be voting on committee members again. So that part of the ballot wouldn't have been there. So I didn't see the physical ballot.
Did you get it?
That's up to Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so, we're all pretty much in some sort of limbo here for a while.
Yeah.
On Act 46, 49.
So we move forward as we always have been until see what they do.
All right, so.
Pownell has no plans to revoke?
No,
Okay.
no, they don't. And doesn't mean that anybody couldn't, because as our attorney explained to us, and everyone was caught up on that back in November after the initial vote, the 30-day window. So it's explained to me that 30 days applied to if somebody wanted to file a petition to challenge the vote or have a revote. But a school board they have the authority to call for a vote anytime they want.
Yes.
So, but I don't see that happening, but.
No.
Unless they're not happy with what the state puts forth, and then I suppose they could, circle the wagons and retreat.
Right, but that would probably occasion a revote by all the communities that were
Right.
considered.
Because just like if the incentives, even though our legislative block here in Bennington County were saying that they believe the incentives could still be there. If that didn't turn out to happen, then Bennington and Shasbury could have the right to ask for a revote because
The proposition is
they
different.
voted thinking the incentives were going to be there. So that's a very different vote. But it's all moot.
Those incentives were written into the actual report, which is the explanatory matter auxiliary to the ballot item. And once that changes, they'd have a pretty good case.
I would believe they would. I would be surprised if they didn't.
Yep. And I think that would have to be honored.
Right.
And it
Are
would
you
be
guys telling me you
reasonable
want to
if
hold
it's-
the vote?
Mm-hmm.
It would be
I don't
reasonable.
think so.
All right, well, I put a lot of items here in the chair's report, but they're mostly short. I'm not really gonna review the Section 9 report, because what I'm thinking of is that we have an annual report to get out. And I put it out to you guys in an email, but we can talk about it here. it seems appropriate to me that we condense that report and use that as our report to the community. So, I'm kinda looking for someone who wants to do it.
I can do that.
Hmm?
I can do that. I am the secretary after
All right. Tim.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Yeah,
you
thank
very
you, because I had
much.
actually left a message for Ray to discuss that with.
Oh,
us, so
okay.
thank you.
when is it,
Spoke
when
too
is,
soon.
when is it due?
It's due
Tell 'em a
in
week
the
before.
16th,
Bit of a
January. I have to, that's when, I believe that's it. I'm supposed to get it in.
He's deadline
to-
oriented, give him a week
Look,
before.
you know,
Well, that's
it's,
that's
I've been,
16.
I've been late before, I've been late before, the sky doesn't fall, but to help, the business office out.
You got your
getting this
email,
together.
warning email from Amanda with the deadline?
I got one, yes.
So did I.
Did you get yours from me?
Yeah.
Yes. That
So
was a
I-
different report, though.
Yes, it was. I haven't seen yours, but Bill, I think, went home and did it.
He
'Cause I
did.
got it at 11 o'clock last.
What a good little boy.
He is good.
Yeah, that was a good switch
So,
on terminology.
okay, so
there.
that's the letter from the board to the district voters. And, I really appreciate that you're willing to do that.
So I should just look at last year's and then take our section 9 report modified with that format basically, is that true?
Yeah, well, I mean, my letters tended to be a little lengthy because I covered a lot of different points, but.
Look at what
you-
he
you
did
could
last
look
year
at
and then
it.
don't do that. It's fine if Ray does that, because that's Ray's thing, you know?
Right,
Okay, but that's cool.
Well, I mean,
Put the science writing to it.
I
Condense,
make an
condense.
argument.
Yeah.
This is just a report. And, I think you
No, this
might
is for
look
the
at
trustees
the
for the
previous
village.
one or
Okay,
two,
okay.
just to
Because
see.
John put it together last year, didn't he?
No, no. That you're thinking of the presentation at the
That's
board
right,
meeting.
John did
Yeah.
a presentation.
That's another issue. We'll consider that next month,
Next
I
month.
think.
All right.
Boy.
Right now, we just need to get
That was a
the
Saturday morning.
letter to the
Yes.
community.
Okay. Yeah, I can.
And Tim did a presentation last week.
Because they're all equally awaiting reading it.
They're what?
They're all equally
yeah.
awaiting reading it.
Yeah.
No, I've never had anybody talk to me about it, ever.
You know, in academia, there's actually kind of a game that we sometimes play where you slip things into a
I've
report.
heard of
Yeah.
that.
To see if someone
To see
reads
if
it,
people actually read
gets
it or
out
not.
right.
So, remember plan books? When I've been teaching long, we used to have to submit our weekly plan book on Friday, and it was the same thing. He'd put something in it to see if the principal was actually reading it when he would put his stamp on it or sign it.
Or tape it together and see if it comes untaped.
Mhm.
Usually it
Teachers
doesn't.
do it with the comments for kids. Like if you write this at the top of your paper on the next thing, you automatically get an A. And stuff. It's just
Who's paying attention? Okay. So, yeah, I read the last couple years worth.
Yeah, I'll figure it
But basically, you're gonna take what's in the report and condense it to, I think it'd be pretty easy to condense, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah.
And send it around. I'll definitely look at it and make some comment or say fine and forward it to Amanda. But, everybody should have a go at it and look at it when he's got it ready first.
Yeah, I'll do that this weekend.
Okay. Then for the annual report, we have, this all has to get put to bed about the same time as the warning for the vote goes out. So by the end of the month, if we're going to have dedications, I sent around, was it 3? 3 or 4 people. I can send you to the obits if you want to do them, or they don't have to be as long as last year's, but you know, John Traver and Phil Varick were pretty important to this school. Especially Phil. I mean, both of them were important in different ways. And Phil was here for 13 years. He was an excellent principal. He wrote books, children's books, including one that got a Dorothy Canfield Fisher Prize. And lived an adventurous life. Planted thousands of trees on his place up in Chestnut.
Do you know who would write a really good report? John Ulrich.
Yep.
Oh, right. they're
'Cause,
very
I mean,
close.
Do you mean the obituary component of it? For Phil?
The dedication
And
for
memorial.
Phil.
Yeah, that was
Because
nice,
they were
yeah.
very, very
Yeah.
close, and they're both Dartmouth boys, and
Yeah, that's
they're
true.
real
Right.
tight. And
Yep.
I think John would appreciate if you asked him to do that.
I'll ask John about that then.
Yeah.
For-
And-
I'm not really
but-
comfortable writing
And I was
that.
gonna say,
No.
what about the other members? Is there anyone
Um,
else like-minded, like you could connect someone?
John Traver.
Yeah.
I don't have time, but
Well, that's probably have to be me.
yeah, why don't
suppose.
you do that, Ray?
Yeah. 'Cause
I mean, I'll
worked
do it
him.
with you.
Take a plan.
Yeah.
And then who was the last one left on the list? I didn't know.
John Scary is in here. I don't know him.
John Scary, he was a board member. He actually was on the board that hired Pat Gibbons.
Joyce
Okay.
Scary's husband.
Yep. I don't know how long he was on the board. That would take a little research, I think. And I'm not sure where to do the research,
Pat.
except
Pat knows.
Pat knows.
Mm.
Well, I just saw this again today. Allison did that work with the documents, and
Mhm.
so there's supposed to be a list of what's there. There must be annual reports.
There is. It's all marked and it's all labeled in.
Boxes. like-
Yeah, those. Those magazine things, and she put labels on the outside of
They're
everything. I mean,
over
it's
in
all
the train
there.
Station.
Hmm?
They're all in the train station.
Yep. Well, I'll ask Pat first because she knew him.
This is school stuff my daughter did.
Okay, so I got two of them, and we'll get John to do the other one. And John will be brief too. That'll be
To the point.
okay. The SVSU budget, we just talked about that with the superintendent. It went up slightly last night, so it's actually now 0.11% above last year's, which, as I remarked before this meeting started, is basically due to adding back in a position for a public information coordinator. Now, the only thing to do is our budget, but first, we have a requirement in our tuition agreement that there be a report. And I asked Tim here to speak a little bit to us about that, and then I think we're gonna have to have a conversation, because this will be about our tuition contract with him in executive session. That's essential to our going forward with the budget, because we need to know, we need to make a decision about that number.
Well, I think in light of all the things we've read in the paper, all the things around the state budgets and things like that, we wanted to try and minimize our impact as much as possible, but also be careful to make sure we had enough to pay all the bills and keep the lights on. So we went through a couple of different options of looking at sort of the lowest possible increase we could make, and we've sort of come to at the board level, we come to the idea of a 1.6% increase, which is about $250 per student per year. And the reason we did that modest increase is that when, and we both have to look at it from different ways. You guys are looking at it from what's our highest possible number, and I have to look at it from what is our lowest possible number. And when I look at our lowest possible number right now, we're at 117 in district. So there's number of situations where that could change. There's families who are departing our district, who are moving out that we know about, and we anticipate them moving out, and they have multiple children. So there's a couple of situations like that we're, trying to realize how that's going to impact us. Now, is it possible that other people will move in? It might be, but I have to look at it potentially for the most conservative. So I'm looking at it from the number of about 114 as our lowest possible number. Now, at the high end, it'd probably be about 120, and in sort of an optimal situation for sort of both parties concerned, from the school's perspective and from your perspective, the 117 where we are now would be a nice number for us to look at. The incoming class is probably going to be pretty sizable again, so we may be looking at a slight increase from the 117.
It's 19 or 20, right?
I think it's 21.
21. Okay.
But we did have a new people came in and talked to me yesterday, and they just moved and they have a kindergartner and they're not on any list.
Yep.
So that's an additional one I didn't know about.
Right.
So our best possible scenario is looking at, or our most conservative possible scenario is looking at that 1.6% increase. If we were to flatline, if we were to just say, hey, we understand, or you guys were to really push back, I think at the number we are now, we'd sort of scratch by. If we dropped a little bit, we'd start to hurt a little bit. We'd be going into the negatives. And one of the things that's different about our budget this year from years prior is in some of the years before, in our overall budget, into our general fund, some of the fundraising money was put into that, and we sort of said that we don't want to earmark that to the general fund. We want to use that for some of the special pieces we're doing. So that's where we sort of have a minor shift as well, in that, if our annual fund raised about $40,000 last year, we're not putting that money into, we're trying not to put that money into the general fund to pay the regular bills. We're using that for special events, special professional development opportunities, those kinds of things, and we think it's important to try and maintain that going forward. So that's where we are. Are there questions that I can try and answer for you?
Well, can you speak to, aside from the number thing, which I think we're going to talk about, but can you speak to just the overall health of the institution in terms of educational?
I think the school is in a very healthy position. We did grow last year by almost 10% in the number of students, which was a huge positive for us. I think in some of we've just finished our strategic planning process, or just doing our final drafts right now, which I'm very excited about. I think it's going to push us in a really positive direction. One is around sort of overall financial sustainability, one around enrollment and marketing, another one sort of around our development, and then the two biggest ones, I think the most important pieces are around our program. And one of those is really focused on how we're developing our curriculum and what we're doing, and how we're going to support that as much as possible and put time and energy towards building an even better one than we currently have. And then the other one is a new initiative that we've taken on around place-based education, and we've already started doing some work around that, bringing in some professionals.
Excuse me? What?
Around place-based education. And that really comes out of the work I did last year of just talking to everybody I possibly could who's related to this institution in some way, shape, or form, that what are the things that are make this place so special. And it's really about the partnerships that this institution has with the community and the region. The wonderful connection we have with Bennington College, with the VAE, with Highland Hall Gardens, and with a lot of the local businesses as well. I mean, you can see it from the artwork around here. The kids go out and visit those places, learn from those people, and then come back and do art projects, writing samples, all sorts of things. And we really think that this school's campus extends throughout the whole community. And this idea of place-based education, which has been around for a while, is really sort of a way we can sort of help say who we are, and really a way for us to think about our curriculum going forward, in that we want to make it more and more place-based, and think about how we can make it, in that context, also project-based. What kinds of projects can we do that are going to bring the kids out into the community, bring community members into the school, and I think by knowing this area really well, they start to expand their understanding of the world beyond, and then can take it to the next level as they grow older. As they grow older, they can start to make the connections. So, well, this is how the place fits into the Vermont scheme of things, and then this is how Vermont fits into the nation, and then the nation fits into the world. We've also, so we brought some experts in. We've created a partnership with a consortium of schools that are doing this kind of work around the country, which also gives us a network of other educators to connect with, and we'll start working with them at the end of the school year. They'll come here for 2 days of professional development, and then also the connections that we'll have around the networking of curriculum and things like that this consortium of schools will provide for us, I think, is a really positive for us. We've added some staff in the last year, which I think is one of our goals around, just providing the best education we can for kids. One of the things we tried to do, or one of the goals, is to provide a general education teaching assistant in our lower levels, and we're slowly doing that. We now have one in kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, and we're trying to build the budget up even more so we can potentially have them all the way through third, and then as we go further, maybe all the way through. So these are things that are being built into our strategic plan that really make I think, really good sense for us, and are real positives for the school. The kids always come in with a huge smile on their face, and I think they are excited about what they do here. So I think we're in a really great position. I would love to see our numbers go up next year, but I have to, and I think they'll remain stable. But I have to worry about some of those unknowable factors that face families within our district and without. So that's where we are. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, answer some of it. Yep.
Right.
So I don't know. Does anybody want to ask a question that's on the board? Want to ask a question, Tim?
I think I would be willing to make a motion to go into executive to have a discussion with Tim regarding
I think
the
there's
negotiations.
some questions we do need to talk about that I think are appropriate for that. But Tim can fill us in on the kind of quaking earth there among some of the students. Because when I looked at the numbers, I was just looking at the raw number of who's leaving in the 6th grade, who's coming in the kindergarten, and so it was 14 leaving and 19, 20 coming
Thanks,
in.
Jim. Good to see you.
Bye.
Good night, Jim. So that 6, I didn't add 6, I added 5. I went to one. No, actually I did add 6. We went to 123 in the budget that you've seen on Google Drive, I guess it is. 123, and we just kept the tuition rate the same. That's what I did. That's what I said to plug in for us. And because that would have produced $75,000 more money income, which should have been quite enough to deal with it. But
After meeting with Tim, I think we concluded that, well, he added some nuance to that and some issues that we need to.
It looks like there might be, as you said, there might be some departures, and they would erode that number. And I don't know. maybe if we, can you show us the information you had? I don't
Well, yeah,
want
I mean,
to do it now, but.
I can present, I can either put it up on the thing, or I
Okay.
can show it to you or send it to you
Yeah.
as whatever's
So,
the easiest way.
That's one thing. I thought everybody should see this, but it's their numbers, it's
Mhm.
not public
Mhm.
numbers, so.
Yep.
And then there's a question which I asked Tim, which I think I ought to ask again, and we ought to talk about it a little bit, so.
Okay.
And, we could do that then. And then I think we may or may not make a decision on this, but hopefully we can come up with a decision. There is one other thing we ought to talk about now, though, which I forgot about, which is that there's one thing I really feel has to be in the mix here for us. Unfortunately, might be up to another $30,000 expense. We need to deal with the boys' bathroom on this floor. It's appalling, really. And unfortunately, if we start tearing into it, we have to follow ADA. And ADA would commit us to having, currently there are 2 stalls and a urinal. The urinal's out, which I'm not displeased with, frankly, because it's basically creates most of the mess in the place. But, and it's gonna cost a lot of money because of the kind of, I really wanted to wall mount the toilets so it's easier to clean, but I'm not sure we're gonna do that because it appears that, I don't know, it may be too expensive. Any rate, it's gonna be somewhere between 15 and 30. And we could break it down into smaller bits because we could subcontract directly. And we could buy the fixtures directly. And that could break it down into where it doesn't have to be bid, but we've had no success getting anybody to give us prices. So I'm thinking it might just be easier to have the SU do a bidding for us. But we have to go through, we have to make sure we've got specs that we're gonna live with. Which I had specs from Centerline Architect, but some of the items that are specified can be changed a little bit, and they'd be, I think I can get them to do that for either I or Renee, because she worked for them for years. Can get that done for us fairly cost effectively, or maybe for nothing, basically. That's my itch. I want to get that done because I see it every day, of course, and it has had its problems. The stalls are deteriorating because they're metal. We want to replace those with 1 inch. That 1 inch plastic material you see on the highway rest stops sometimes, because it doesn't deteriorate under the acid load that's in there, and so forth and so on. Yeah. Anyway, so basically the kind of increase that Tim was talking about is about 29,000 at the number we were thinking about, 123, 29,000 additional dollars. And so it's right in the same range as maybe the bathroom too. And then yesterday the SU added this $40,000 expense back in there that adds $22 of assessment to us, and cuts down on our maneuvering room a little bit. Okay. So, executive session?
I'll make a motion to go into executive to discuss contracts.
Yep.
I'll second.
Do you
All
want
in
us to
favor?
come back